In ancient times, in the faraway lands of Benares, a king had a son who carried more than just royal blood in his veins. He seemed to carry the poison of pride itself. This prince, known behind his back as the Cursed Prince, was the kind of person whose mere presence could freeze the air in a room. Every word he spoke felt like a blow, and he treated those around him as disposable tools. No one could stand him. Not the guards, nor the servants, not even the wisest men in the court. One day, tired of his routine, the prince ordered, "Prepare everything. I want to bathe in the river. Don't keep me waiting." Those around him exchanged glances. Despite their fear of his wrath, they obeyed in silence. He left for the river, followed by a guard escort, each carrying not only the prince's orders but also a silent wish that he might never return. The sky seemed to sense the weight of the prince's arrogance. Dark clouds formed suddenly, and a storm began to take shape on the horizon. When they arrived at the riverbank, the waters were already turbulent. The prince, however, didn't care. He looked at his servants with the same disdain as always. "Take me to the middle of the river and bathe me now." Reluctantly, the guards led him into the center of the water. The current was strong, but their desire for relief from the prince's tyranny was even stronger. It was in that moment, when nature seemed to conspire with them, that they made a decision. "What can the king do to us?" one guard whispered. "If the prince disappears today, it'll be a favor to the kingdom." Without hesitation, they shoved the prince into the raging water, leaving him at the mercy of the current. The prince struggled and screamed, but his words were drowned by the wind and waves. The guards returned to shore, satisfied. When the king asked, they would say the prince was lost in the storm. Meanwhile, the prince, now alone, was swept away by the merciless waters, his arrogance dissolving with every wave that submerged him. As he was carried by the river's force, the prince desperately clung to a piece of driftwood. For the first time in his life, he tasted the bitterness of helplessness. He was no longer a prince, but just a man fighting to survive. From the current, a snake slithered onto the driftwood. This was no ordinary snake. In a previous life, it had been a greedy man, obsessed with gold he had buried along the riverbank. His greed condemned him to be reborn as a snake, destined to guard his treasure even after death. Now, the river forced him to abandon his wealth and seek a new fate. Soon after, a small rat emerged from the water and scurried to the other end of the driftwood. Like the snake, the rat was also burdened by greed. He had once been a man who amassed countless treasures, only to bury them before he died. Now reduced to a rodent, he was learning the hard way that wealth means nothing when faced with a raging current. Finally, a parrot descended in an unsteady flight and perched on the driftwood. Unlike the others, the parrot had no gold or possessions. It was a creature free from the chains of the past, simply trying to survive. For different destinies now shared the same driftwood. An arrogant prince, a greedy snake, a miserly rat, and a bird without expectations. The river carried them together as if to teach them that in the struggle for survival, titles, wealth, and pride have no meaning. While the driftwood floated downstream, an ascetic living in a hut along the riverbank heard desperate cries coming from the water. He was a simple man, but his heart was full of compassion. When he saw the creatures adrift, he didn't hesitate. With steady steps, the ascetic waded into the turbulent waters, ignoring the cold and the current's strength. As he approached the driftwood, he shouted, "Do not fear, I am here." With superhuman effort, he dragged the driftwood to shore. There, he lit a fire, but instead of tending to the prince first, he cared for the animals. The prince watched silently, anger bubbling inside him. "How dare this man care for animals before me?" he thought. But the ascetic remained unmoved, guided by something greater than titles or vanity. The next day, the animals expressed their gratitude. The snake said, "Master, I have 40 chests of gold buried. If you ever need it, call on me." The rat offered his treasure. "There are 30 chests of gold in my burrow. They are yours if you desire them." The parrot, with no wealth to offer, said, "If you ever need rice, come to the Himalayas and call me. My kin will bring you all you need." The ascetic thanked them all and allowed them to go. However, the prince remained silent. Instead of gratitude, he harbored only resentment. One day, he thought bitterly, "This man will pay for treating me like a commoner." When the ascetic later visited the palace to test the prince's gratitude, he was met with hostility. Now king, the prince feared his humiliating story would be revealed. "Seize him," the king ordered. "Beat him on every corner of the city, and in the end, cut off his head." As the ascetic was dragged through the streets, he repeated a quiet phrase, "Driftwood is worth more than some men." The people, hearing his words, began to wonder, why does he say that? What happened between him and the king? When the truth came to light, a revolt erupted. The king was overthrown, and his body was thrown beyond the city walls, discarded like dead weight, without honor. The people crowned the ascetic as their new king. He ruled with wisdom, knowing that true wealth lies not in gold but in loyalty and gratitude. He revisited the animals and called on each of them. The snake, the rat, and the parrot all honored their promises, but the ascetic refused their offerings. "What you have already given me is more than enough," he said. Through this, he taught that true wealth is measured not by treasure but by acts of kindness and loyalty. Like the river's current, the ascetic's reign flowed with justice and compassion, reminding everyone that even driftwood can save a life. But an ungrateful heart is nothing but dead weight. As time passed, the ascetic's reign became known for its lightness and wisdom, with gratitude as its greatest treasure. His days were simple, but his presence transformed everything around him. He understood that while material wealth may be abundant, the true essence of a person lies in their ability to recognize and repay kindness. In one of his final reflections, the king recalled his journey on the river, the driftwood that had sustained them, and the unlikely companions fate had brought together. He thought of the snake, the rat, and the parrot, each teaching in their own way what it means to repay kindness, regardless of material value. When his time as king came to an end, the ascetic left the throne with the same simplicity with which he had assumed it. He returned to the riverbank where the current had once tested him. There, he reflected on life cycles and realized that kindness is like driftwood, simple, humble, yet capable of saving lives and warming hearts. Just as the driftwood had sustained them, the ascetic understood that each of us can be that driftwood for someone else, a lifeline between despair and hope through a simple act of compassion. As the moonlight reflected on the calm river, he whispered one final teaching to the world. Driftwood is worth more than some men, because even the simplest act can be an anchor for those adrift, but an ungrateful heart that will never find a safe harbor. Thanks for watching. In this story, you learned about the Buddhist parable of grateful animals and ungrateful man, and the teaching that this text has to give us. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Share with your friends, and leave your comments below about what you thought of this story. We always bring stories with teachings for modern life.